My husband ended our marriage with a text message and emptied our joint account. He thought I would fall apart. Before I tell you how it unfolded, tell me, where are you watching from right now? Because what happened next wasn't loud, it was calculated. The message arrived while I was helping a customer at my boutique. I was smoothing the sleeve of a linen dress, adjusting the lighting so the color looked right, when my phone vibrated against the counter. I expected a delivery alert, maybe a supplier confirmation. Instead, I saw his name, Ryan. I didn't open it immediately. I finished folding the dress first, handed it over with a smile, took the payment. Only when the door closed behind my customer did I glance down. I'm done. I'm leaving tonight. I've already moved the money. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. That was it. No conversation. No warning. Just a clean cut delivered through a screen. My name is Lena, and I was 27 years old when my husband decided a text message was enough to erase our life. I didn't cry. My hands didn't shake. The only thing that changed was the way I breathed. Slow, steady, deliberate. He thought silence meant shock. It didn't. It meant I was thinking. I locked the boutique early that evening. The bell above the door rang once, sharp and final, and then the space fell quiet. The racks of clothing stood perfectly still. Everything looked the same. That was the strange part. The world hadn't cracked open the way people expect when something ends. I sat behind the counter and reread the message. Then another came through. You'll be fine. You always land on your feet. Just don't do anything dramatic. I almost smiled. Almost. Because if there was one thing Ryan had never understood about me, it was this: I don't react. I prepare. The signs hadn't started that day. They'd started months earlier. Late nights that didn't line up with his pay stubs. A sudden obsession with appearance. Password changes. Credit alerts I hadn't signed up for. Each detail small on its own. Together, they told a story he assumed I wasn't paying attention to. 3 months earlier, I'd opened a second account at a different bank. Quietly. No joint access. No shared notifications. When Ryan suggested we simplify our finances and combine everything, I agreed without hesitation. I even thanked him for thinking ahead. What he didn't realize was that the account he watched wasn't the one that mattered anymore. That night, I didn't go looking for him. I went home. The house was dark when I walked in. My house. Purchased before the marriage. Kept in my name because something in me had always resisted changing that detail. Ryan used to tease me about it. Called me cautious. Said I worried too much. I poured a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table, phone face down. The room was quiet enough that I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. That calm wasn't peace. It was focus. Another message lit up the screen. She's young. She makes me feel understood. You wouldn't get it. There it was. The justification. The explanation he thought mattered. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up a folder I'd labeled something harmless months earlier. Inside were screenshots, transaction logs, notes with dates and times. Nothing dramatic. Just patterns. Clear ones. Ryan sent one more message before midnight. I'll send someone for my things later. Don't touch anything. I closed the laptop. He still thought he was in control. The next morning, I woke up early. Not because I couldn't sleep, but because I had a call to make. I stepped outside with my coffee while the city was still quiet and dialed a number I'd saved but never used. Good morning, a calm voice answered. It's Lena, I said. We talked a while back. I think it's time. There was a pause. Then, did he make his move? Yes. Good, she replied. That helps. I ended the call feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Not relieved. Certain. Back at the boutique, my phone stayed silent for hours. That didn't last. What did you do? Ryan finally wrote. My card isn't working. The transfer didn't finish. Answer me. I stared at the messages without typing a single word. The account he emptied had done exactly what it was supposed to do, prove intent. And now, he was starting to realize something wasn't right. Around noon, he called. I let it ring. He called again, and again. Each unanswered ring tightened the situation. Silence can be unsettling when you're used to control. By evening, the tone changed. Let's talk like adults. You don't need to make this complicated. I just want what's fair. Fair. I closed the boutique, flipped the sign to closed, and locked the door slowly. My reflection stared back at me through the glass, calm, steady, unbothered. Ryan had expected panic, tears, messages begging for answers. Instead, he'd been met with nothing. That night, I opened my laptop one more time and sent a single message of my own. Not to him. Proceed. I hovered over the send button for a second longer than necessary. Because once I pressed it, there was no undo. No soft explanations. No stepping back. Then I clicked send. And that's when the situation truly began to change. When I sent that single word, proceed, I didn't explain it to anyone. I didn't need to. The person on the other end already knew exactly what it meant. That night passed quietly. Too quietly. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears and makes you aware of every small sound. The ticking clock. The hum of the streetlight outside. My phone stayed face down on the table, but I could feel it there, like it was waiting for something. Morning arrived without drama. Sunlight through the curtains. The smell of coffee. For a moment, my life looked completely ordinary again. That illusion didn't last. By the time I unlocked the boutique, I had 12 missed calls. Ryan. Unknown numbers. One voicemail from a blocked caller. I didn't listen yet. I went through my routine instead. Turned on the lights. Adjusted the front display. Straightened hangers that didn't need straightening. Customers started coming in, chatting about weekend plans and seasonal colors. I smiled when appropriate. Nodded. Listened. All the while, my phone kept vibrating in my pocket like a trapped insect. Around mid-morning, I stepped into the back room and finally listened to the voicemail. Lena, Ryan's voice said, no longer confident, no longer casual. Something's wrong. The bank flagged the transfer. They froze the account. I need you to call me. Now. I ended the message before he could say anything else. He still didn't understand what was happening. That was the point. The joint account he drained was designed to look central. It received regular deposits, paid predictable bills. It was the one he checked, the one he felt comfortable touching. What he never paid attention to were the accounts tied to my business, accounts he dismissed as small operations because he never bothered to ask questions. I had. A few hours later, my attorney called. He tried to move funds again this morning, she said calmly. That attempt helped. It shows a pattern. I leaned against the counter, fingers brushing the edge of folded fabric. What happens next? There's an emergency filing in motion. But I need to ask, has he contacted you directly? Yes. Good. Don't respond. There it was again. That quiet confidence. The same one I felt settling into my chest. Ryan, meanwhile, was unraveling. The texts kept coming. You're overreacting. This is unnecessary. We can fix this privately. Why aren't you answering? Each message revealed more than the last. His urgency. His assumption that I owed him a response. His belief that I would eventually give in just to make things comfortable again. By early afternoon, he tried a different angle. I'm stuck, he wrote. My card won't work. The hotel says there's an issue. I need access to the funds. Hotel. So he'd already left. Already started the life he thought he'd secured. I imagined him standing at a counter somewhere, confidence cracking as a polite employee explained there was nothing they could do. I imagined the pause that followed, the moment when reality finally knocked. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the message to my attorney. Her response came minutes later. That helps more than you know. Late that afternoon, I finally listened to the missed calls from unknown numbers. One was from a bank representative, another from a financial institution I recognized but hadn't dealt with in years. That one caught my attention. I returned that call. Ms. Carter, the representative said, her voice measured professional. We need to verify some recent activity connected to your name. Yes, I replied evenly. I expected this call. There was a brief pause. You did? Yes. I can provide documentation. I heard her typing. Then, that would be helpful. After the call ended, I sat down slowly. The pieces were aligning. Not explosively. Methodically. Ryan called again. This time I answered. Finally, he said, relief flooding his voice. Listen, there's been a misunderstanding. There hasn't. I interrupted, my tone calm. Silence followed. He hadn't expected that. I need access to the account, he said after a moment. Things are complicated. They don't have to be, I replied. You made your choices. You're being unreasonable, he snapped. You can't just freeze everything. I didn't, I said softly. You did. He stopped breathing for a second. I could hear it. That hitch. That moment when someone realizes they're no longer steering. What does that mean? He asked. It means, I said, choosing my words carefully, that the account you touched was never the foundation. Another silence. Longer this time. You're bluffing, he finally said. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. I don't bluff. He hung up. That night, I received a notification confirming something had gone through. A digital stamp. A time marker. Proof that the process had crossed a threshold. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, because I knew what came next. The next morning, Ryan didn't text. He showed up. I was rearranging the front display when I saw him through the glass. His posture was stiff, his expression tight. The man who had walked out with confidence now hesitated before opening the door. The bell rang as he stepped inside. Customers turned to look. He froze when he realized he wasn't alone. Lena, he said, lowering his voice. We need to talk. Now. I met his gaze evenly. You should leave. This is my... He stopped himself, glancing around. We'll talk outside. I shook my head. There's nothing to discuss. His jaw tightened. You think you're in control right now? I leaned closer, just enough for him to hear me clearly. I know I am. His phone buzzed. He checked it, face draining of color as he read whatever was on the screen. He looked back at me, eyes wide with something close to fear. What did you do? He whispered. I didn't answer, because at that exact moment, my own phone vibrated with a message from my attorney. 3 words. He's been notified. I looked back at Ryan, who was still staring at his screen like it might change if he waited long enough. And I knew this was only the beginning. Ryan didn't say anything for several seconds. He just stood there in the middle of my boutique, phone clenched in his hand, eyes locked on the screen as if the words might rearrange themselves if he stared long enough. Customers were still browsing. Soft music played overhead. The world kept moving. What is this? He finally asked, holding the phone out toward me, his voice low and tight. I didn't look at the screen. I didn't need to. You should probably step outside, I said calmly. This isn't the place. His mouth opened, then closed again. For a moment, I thought he might argue. Instead, he turned sharply and walked out, the bell above the door ringing louder than necessary. Every head in the room followed him. I waited until the glass door shut before exhaling. I knew what he'd received. The notification wasn't dramatic. No flashing warnings. No threatening language. Just a formal message stating that certain actions were under review and that access had been restricted pending further clarification. Polite. Precise. Unavoidable. That message marked the point of no return. I finished my workday as usual, though I could feel the tension humming just beneath my skin. Every few minutes, my phone buzzed. I didn't check it. Control isn't about reacting faster, it's about choosing when to respond. By the time I locked up, I had 23 missed calls. Ryan. His sister. A number I didn't recognize. At home, I finally sat down and opened my laptop. An email from my attorney waited at the top of my inbox. He attempted to dispute the restrictions. That attempt was logged. Logged. That word mattered. I replied with a single sentence. What's the next step? Her response came almost immediately. Tomorrow morning. Be prepared. I slept better than I had in weeks. The next day began with rain tapping softly against the windows. I made coffee and stood there watching the city blur beyond the glass, feeling something settle into place. Not satisfaction. Not relief. Just certainty. At 9:12 a.m., my phone rang. Miss Carter, a male voice asked. This is Oliver from Financial Compliance. We need to clarify some recent activity. I'm available, I said. What would you like to know? The call lasted 20 minutes. I answered every question calmly, provided dates, forwarded documentation, explained patterns. At no point did I raise my voice or assign blame. I didn't need to. When the call ended, I received another notification. Status updated. Ryan, meanwhile, was spiraling. He sent messages I didn't read until later. Accusations at first. Then confusion. Then something that almost sounded like regret. You planned this. You've been setting me up. Why would you do this to me? I archived the thread. That afternoon, his sister Megan showed up at the boutique. She stood near the entrance for a moment before approaching the counter, her expression carefully neutral. He says you're trying to ruin him, she said without preamble. I met her gaze. I'm not doing anything to him. She crossed her arms. Then why can't he access his funds? Which funds? I asked. She hesitated. Exactly. I'm not comfortable being in the middle of this. I continued evenly. If he has questions, he can direct them through proper channels. Megan studied me for a long moment, as if trying to reconcile the person she thought I was with the one standing in front of her now. He didn't expect this, she finally said. No, I replied. He didn't. She left without another word. That evening, my attorney called. He's requested an in-person meeting, she said, with counsel present. I closed my eyes briefly. Where? Downtown. Tomorrow. I agreed. The conference room was cold and minimalist. Neutral colors. Frosted glass. Everything designed to feel impersonal. Ryan sat across from me, his posture rigid, his jaw clenched. He looked tired. Not physically. Mentally. Like someone who'd been running headfirst into walls. This is excessive, he said as soon as the door closed. We could have handled this privately. You didn't want private, I replied. You wanted fast. His lawyer cleared his throat. Let's focus on resolution. Ryan leaned forward. She's frozen access to shared resources. My attorney didn't even look at me before responding. The restrictions are a result of documented actions taken by your client. Ryan's eyes flicked to me. You moved money. I moved mine, I said calmly. You hid it. I separated it. He laughed sharply. That's the same thing. It's not, my attorney said. And the documentation is clear. Ryan's lawyer flipped through papers, brow furrowing. What documentation? Ryan asked, suddenly wary. I slid a folder across the table. He opened it. The change in his expression was immediate. Confusion gave way to realization. Then something close to disbelief. These dates, he started. Match your transactions. My attorney finished. Your messages. Your access logs. Ryan looked up at me. You were tracking me. I was paying attention. He leaned back, rubbing his face. You waited. Yes. The room fell silent. Why? He asked finally. Why not confront me? Because confrontation invites excuses, I said. Preparation doesn't. His lawyer closed the folder slowly. We need a moment. They stepped outside. I stayed where I was, hands folded neatly on the table. I didn't feel victorious. I felt resolved. When they returned, Ryan wouldn't meet my eyes. There's a proposal, his lawyer said carefully. My attorney nodded. We're listening. The proposal was simple, clean, favorable. It acknowledged reality without admitting fault. It was the kind of resolution people accept when they realize the alternative is worse. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I asked one question. Why did you come to my boutique? Ryan looked up, startled. What? Yesterday, I said. Why show up there? He hesitated. Then, I thought if I spoke to you face to face. If you reminded me who you thought I was. I finished. His silence confirmed it. I'm not that person anymore, I said quietly. We adjourned without signing anything. That night, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. It was a message from someone named Alyssa. I don't know if you remember me, it read. We met once. I think you should know something. I stared at the screen. Another open loop. I typed back a single word. What? The response came seconds later. He told me the money was his. I felt my pulse quicken, not with fear, but with clarity. Because that changed everything. I stared at Alyssa's message longer than I should have. Not because I was surprised, but because it confirmed something I had already suspected. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I set my phone down and walked through my house, touching familiar surfaces. The counter I'd refinish myself. The bookshelf Ryan once said was unnecessary. These weren't reminders of loss. They were reminders of ownership, of intention. When I finally responded, I kept it simple. Tell me what you know. Her reply came in fragments. Short bursts, like she was nervous someone might see her typing. She explained that she'd met Ryan months earlier, long before the message he sent me, that he'd framed himself as financially independent, that he complained about a controlling spouse who didn't appreciate ambition, that when money became an issue, he'd insisted it was temporary because he had access to funds that were tied up, funds he claimed were his. I closed my eyes. That detail mattered, not emotionally, but structurally. I forwarded the conversation to my attorney with a single line. This completes the picture. Her response was immediate. Yes, it does. The next meeting happened 2 days later. Same room. Same table. Very different tone. Ryan looked smaller somehow. Not physically, emotionally. The confidence he used to wear like armor was gone, replaced by something brittle. Alyssa wasn't there. She didn't need to be. Her messages were enough. My attorney spoke first. Calm. Precise. There's now corroboration that false representations were made regarding access to funds. Ryan's lawyer stiffened. That's speculative. Not when it aligns with documented actions, she replied, sliding printed transcripts across the table. Ryan reached for them, hands trembling slightly. I didn't mean it like that, he said quickly. Things were complicated. They usually are, I said evenly. That doesn't change what you said, or did. The room went quiet. Finally, his lawyer spoke again, slower this time. We're prepared to finalize the agreement. I studied Ryan for a moment. The man who had once believed a text message could end everything. The man who thought silence meant surrender. I agree, I said. With one condition. Both lawyers looked at me. Ryan's eyes widened. What condition? That all communication ends here. No follow-ups. No reinterpretations. This is the last conversation. He hesitated, then nodded. We signed. No shouting. No scenes. Just the soft scratch of pen on paper and the quiet click of finality. When I walked out of the building, the air felt lighter. Not because I'd won, but because I was done. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. The boutique expanded its hours. A new supplier came on board. Customers returned, unaware that anything in my personal life had shifted. And that felt right. My story didn't need to be public to be complete. Ryan tried to message me once more. Just once. I hope you're happy. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because happiness no longer required his awareness. Alyssa sent one final message a month later. I'm sorry I didn't question things sooner. I replied honestly. Sometimes clarity arrives late. What matters is what you do once it does. That was the last I heard from either of them. One evening, as I closed the boutique and turned off the lights, I caught my reflection in the glass. I looked the same, but I wasn't. I was steadier. I'd learned something through all of this, not about relationships, but about myself. That preparation isn't cold. It's protective. That silence can be strength. And that walking away calmly is sometimes the most powerful response of all. If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or expected to fall apart, remember this. Not every ending needs noise. Some are decided quietly, and they last.